a cover operation for a smuggling operation for cocaine, bringing cocaine from California to Portland. So I was right in the middle of telling a story about Mastercraft of Portland. And I was just explaining how Dirty's social standing had changed drastically since this whole Mastercraft thing started. Like, he was pretty much like a hated slimeball by most everybody on the moorage. It's a love-hate. They had him like running the dredge and stuff down there, and they tried to ban him, and it was just always issues. But then the Mastercraft thing came along, and all of a sudden there was all these fancy yuppies hanging out with him and stuff. So he got like credibility, I guess you might say, where he wasn't being tried to run off. So now then he hooked up with this girl. I told the story about her. She was just a fucking wingnut and got pregnant gold digger style, just straight up trying, like, looking at Doug and just thinking like, oh, this dude has money. But he didn't have it. He had all the he didn't. It was his roommates, all of it, the boats, the cars, everything. Dirty had nothing. He had his deck shoes and his wallet. So as this social standing started rising, right, there was like a whole new batch of people. So one of these people, he was one of these guys that his family had owned a business, spoiled kid, cokehead style. So he shows up there, and these parties were crazy. And all these people would show up, and Doug was always about like cooking and steaks and meat and grilling and all this. Let's have a big old party. And so, you know, huge orders of meat from the store up the street, and all the Mastercraft people are there, and you know, I'm like, we're charged with like collecting money to go get the meat order, you know, and it's like hundreds of dollars. And it's like, then some dude walks in the middle of the room with the neon case cover on his brick Motorola, stands in the middle of the room and is like, who wants Coke, right? And is able to get 80 times the money for the Coke order. And I'm like trying to get people to pay for the meat and trying to get the food order right. By the time I get the order and I go get the food and I come back, everybody's high on Coke. I don't really know what's going on. I'm a little young. I mean, I kind of do, but not. Like, I don't realize that nobody's going to eat. So we got hundreds of dollars. And, you know, everybody's just fucking partying on, fucking drinking and doing Coke. So they just kind of ignored the meat. And this was kind of the scene, and it was just like, and it was the turn of the decade, so it was becoming the 90s. So it transformed from the 80s to the 90s during this time. And as I got older, I kind of like went off and did my own thing. Like, I couldn't hang with these people. As a kid, I was like their little go-to, like, hey, go grab this, go grab that, make me a cocktail, load my bowl, freaking tie up the boat, like all this. Well, as I got older, it was like, I had a ring in my eye and long hair, and I was getting tattoos. Totally didn't fit in with like this whole yuppie crowd of boat people anymore, right? So I would see them a little bit, but it turns out it was not lucky. It was lucky, but it wasn't luck. It was just lucky that I kind of had branched off into my own world, which I went off and I was growing weed at the time. And, you know, Dirty was just like, oh, rah, 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 you know. And then, like, I'd go back down there. I used to live there, and then I, you know, moved away at like 16, but then I was like back there all the time. And then this extra slimy dude that came in later, he I just saw this dude working at Burgerville like a year ago. I mean, he's like 15 years older than I am. So cocaine and partying on, he just was just grabbed by that. He got me a job like during the Rose Festival, right? So there's all these boats down in the docks or maybe it wasn't the Rose Festival, maybe it was just some kind of event. There's tons of events at the Portland waterfront throughout the summer. So I got this job, right? So there's this event, and there was a boat tied up to a dock. We show up, Dirty, Slimeball, me, show up in the Mastercraft, and Slimeball knows these people that are docked, and it's like a family, right? It's like daughters my age and their little girlfriends, and a husband and wife. So we moor next to them, and we just hang out with them like all day. And then I can't remember if it was like that day or a following day that they came down to the houseboat and then had like a huge spread. And this guy actually hired me, right? Like, I started doing the dishes without being asked, you know. I just, like, that was what I did. It was like they were feeding me. Like, my mom had, at that point, like, a while back, she had cut me off from food, so I had to feed myself. And when I lost the job at the video store, then I was pretty much just getting fed by, like, Dirty and eating cat food. But their cat food was like turkey breast and roast beef and chicken breast, like huge, beautiful meat. And go feed the cats and eat the cats, right? So some for the cats, some for me. My mom had cut me off. Then she had taken my little brother and they had moved to Spain. So now I'm living at my grandparents' house, but I'm like hanging out at Dirty's house, which I used to live on the houseboat moorage. Now I live like an hour bus ride away. So I'm down there all the time though. And I get a job at a carpet warehouse working for this guy. And that was like total, like, just embracing being just a broke worker that just works and just has duct tape bandages all over my hands every day because the carpet cutting with razor blades was constantly cutting, and knees hurt from being on the hands and knees all day. So it was a carpet apprentice type of thing going on. So in this time, I'm hanging out with Dirty and the Mastercraft things going on, but I'm kind of going over into my own world. Well, this guy, he's got this buddy from high school. My boss now, right? The carpet boss. And he's got this buddy from high school that he keeps employed that's a straight up fucking junkie. I'm talking needle, heroin, coke, whatever the could get his hands on junkie. And this is this dude's buddy from high school, and he still keeps him around working. And so this is who he teams me up with can work. So this Slimeball dude, total cokehead. That's how I meet this guy, carpet boss, right? And he starts me off by working at like his house. around like his daughters and his wife and stuff. And, I just show up there and do like landscaping and, and then he'd hook me up with other friends. Like, I was just like a odd job guy for their friends for a hot second. And then he decided to actually put me to work. So I'm working there and with this whole drug influence, and then I'm partying down at the houseboat moorage, kind of with Slimeball. And so then, I did coke a few times in that period, and I wasn't even, my mom hadn't even left yet. That's right. So I was literally out. I went to Slimeball. I worked all week for Carpet Boss. I had been working for a while. Friday night was like, oh, I have money. I guess cocaine is what people do when they have money. So I call up Slimeball or paged him or whatever the medium was back then, and hooked up with him. Ended up hanging out with him and just a crew of just slimy people. And I'm like, I'm gonna go get chicks. So I borrowed his car and I take his car down to the cruise section, and I'm cruising around. I'm trying to find chicks. I end up getting arrested. I'll tell this story. This is just like a side story about Slimeball, dude. So I get arrested. The car stays there. My mom I'm living at my grandparents' house. My mom has to come pick me up. I'm high. She picks me up. I'm paranoid the whole time. I go in my old bedroom. I wait for the first bus to show up. And then I start bussing to get back out to the car. I should just tell this story. I'll tell this story. Get the car back. Okay. So this is the type of lifestyle that I was in at that time. Just working this job that I met with these people, right? And I'm hooking up with a friend of the daughters, and it's the same. And then I'm hooking up with this I'm stringing a bunch of stories together, telling the Mastercraft story. So there's a lot of stuff in here that won't make sense unless the other stories have been told. But this is just the story of Mastercraft and kind of what was going on at that time, right? So growing up, I'm hooking up with girls. I this girlfriend that's 13 years older than me. We get a house. We start growing, right? Well, at that point, the yuppie the sales dude from Mastercraft is over at Dirty's one day, and it's oh, well, here's what happened at Mastercraft. So, Mastercraft, you've probably already figured this out by now, but Mastercraft Portland was a cover operation for a smuggling operation for cocaine, bringing cocaine from California to Portland. They would literally put the cocaine in the boats. I guess Mastercrafts were made somewhere in California. They would take possession of the order of a trailer full of boats. They'd stick coke in it and send it to Portland, and that's then the dealership was the hub, and all these people who just kept showing up and randomly rolling around in Mastercrafts, which these were really expensive boats. Adjusted for inflation, they might be $60,000 to $100,000 boats, So these were the coke dealers that were making so much money, hooked up with these guys, Masquerade, hey, you want a boat? Hey, and so it was they needed to sell more boats because that's how the coke came in. So they literally had this giant operation that got busted, and it was huge. The dude that was the head dude, I had met him seen him several occasions. I know exactly who he was. He was Mr. Cool type dude. He didn't say to me, but I know that was the main guy, and he might still be in prison. I have no idea, but cocaine, but he could have been a rat or something and got out of it. But the cocaine conspiracy that huge back in those times would have just brought a mad sentence. So the sales dude, Dirty, and I were sitting there, and he's just telling me all about it. And Dirty's just like, you shouldn't be growing weed. You shouldn't be growing weed. You're going to get busted and go to prison and all this, and it's like, I really believe in. It's not like I'm just growing it for the money. It's like, I actually am like, this is important. I'm going to sacrifice my life for this because the truth is not out there, and the truth is great, and the lies are bull. So I'm all in, and growing, smuggling, all that, and look what side of I'm on the winning team. Okay, so winning. So yeah, he ran down the whole story of how they were smuggling the in, and how they got busted, and blah blah blah, and everybody was doing time. He wasn't doing time. He was out. So I mean, now with what I know now, chances are he probably cooperated with the feds. Whether he had anything to do with this, he was just like the local sales guy. He probably knew what was going on, which is all it takes. I mean, if you know of something going on like that and you don't call the police and tell them, and they can prove you know it when it all goes, you're in as much trouble as everybody else, right? But generally, those peripheral people, if they just are like, oh, as a salesman, yeah, everybody did coke, blah, blah, blah. The boss told me to sell boats to these guys for cash, whatever the case may be. I don't know. But that was literally my name was involved because I was at so many of these parties. I was in so many of these boats. I hung around with so many of the people that my name was just in there. So we are going to do a Freedom of Information Act on me. And it's going to be very interesting because of political and some games that I was playing with people. I would tell some people in prison just some crazy stories. Just make up some just crazy and tell them this. And then this to other person. And I did this every time I thought somebody was a snitch and they were trying to pump me for information. So I can't wait to pull all this information and see what ones of those crazy ass stories I told made it all the way into my paperwork. Because that was fully the intent. My old idea for writing a book used to be that the feds were writing it for me, and that all I would have to do is pull my Freedom of Information Act and give that to, the ghostwriter, and that would be gold. Well, that would be part of it, but now this is how we're doing it. So that was the story of Mastercraft.